Welcome back to Untitled Artwork. In this episode, we talk about what the fuck are we talking about? Welcome back to Untitled Artwork. This video is
fucking hell, you're worse than me.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Untitled Artwork. This video is episode 2 of our 0 to 1,000 sales series, and we talk about how to make your first 1,000 sales through the use of social media. Hope you enjoy. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Nailed it.
If people would like to guess, what X Factor contestant does Karl look like?
Yes.
I'll give you a clue. He might be knocking at your door.
I've got a red jumper.
Where is your red jumper, by the way?
Yeah,
hey bro, where's your red jumper?
It's in the wash at the moment. Someone's knocking at your door.
Someone's ringing the bell.
Yeah. Okay, so social media.
Cool.
Where the fuck do we start?
By creating an account's probably the first place we should start.
Yeah, there's so many platforms to choose from, though, isn't there?
I would say, if you don't mind me saying first of all, I would say that if you're going to create an account, do it in your own name. Like, don't do these kind of, some people have, I don't know, a footballer's type name or something, or listen, people each their own, but I'm not a fan of the kind of people put, is it GFX or is it, I'm assuming that's meant to say graphics, right? Or it's some sort of acronym for that. But I always believe...
Do you mean like Decali Designs?
No,
that's not my Twitter name.
Not so much that.
It was for a while though.
Not so much that. I just think
mine's got art in it.
I always think that, but you've got your
I do have another account, yeah.
So and I think that isn't that just your full name, pretty much? Yeah. So I understand that. I just think that you should, if you're trying to get work, or not just trying to get work, I guess, because obviously we're doing this about selling prints and stuff. But I just think it's always good to just do your own name, so people have kind of invest in you as a person, and and then that way, if they need to look for you in it, they just need to type your name in, because as soon as you put the word designs in, I'm sure like a million account comes up, millions of accounts come up. So in my humble opinion, I think that if you're going to start a social media account, you should just do it in your own name. It doesn't have to be your full name or your surname, but just at least represent you in some sort of way where people know who it is.
What's difficult to do as well is make sure that the names are consistent across all the platforms.
Yeah.
And something that I've recently changed my Twitter and Instagram handle recently from Cali Design to Cali UI, because the main reason was because when I was out and about and people asked me what I do and what my Twitter and IG handles were, for them to type it in on a phone, Cali Design was difficult to say to them and for them to type in. So just having things like that in mind, just either it's your full name or it's something short that's snappy. You've got to sort of take those into account as well.
If you had to give somebody one of your social media accounts to follow, which one would you pick?
Instagram.
Twitter for me. Just because I'm more active on it. I find that with Twitter, at least there's an element of conversation. I don't find that with Instagram. Instagram is very much, here's the image, and then like you'll be lucky if everybody kind of sees it. Whereas I think on Twitter there's a bit more. You get a bit more noticed by different people, and then there's if somebody wants to ask you a question about it or sort of DM you about bits and pieces, you can have a little bit of a conversation. And obviously I've got more followers on it.
Yeah, I think for me it depends on who's asking. Like if I ran into someone at a match, I'd probably tell them to follow me on Twitter. If I was talking to somebody about potentially working together, I'd probably get them to follow me on Insta, because I just think I have it's a better way of seeing a lot of my work, presenting a lot of my work in one place. So I think that would probably be my instinct in terms of picking between the two.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny about that is that I sort of agree with that, because I sort of agree with what you said, Carl, but at the same time, with Instagram stories now, I have a lot more one-on-one conversations with people via stories now than I do on Twitter, full stop.
Yeah.
Like Twitter threads, everyone can see them, and people are don't really want to give you their opinion in case the judge don't like. And we've seen over the last couple of days, you say something's black on Twitter, someone will say, it's white.
Yeah.
So I've seen more recently. I don't know whether that's maybe because of the more interactions on Instagram stories that you can have now. You can react, you can like something, and it breeds into that engagement piece a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the only thing I'd say the difference between the two is with Twitter, you could probably get more outside eyes on what you're doing than whereas Instagram, it's kind of a bit like you're following in that kind of that close, a bit of a closer viewing, if you like, of what you're doing. But then again, it depends on what you do, and maybe my thing is I don't use Instagram properly or to its full potential, which is probably the case because I've always been more heavily Twitter influenced just over the years. So that's probably part of why I would shift that way, and most of my sales have all sort of come through that side of things. I found it really hard to get my followers up on Instagram, really hard.
I think that is a good point though that you've just kind of stumbled upon, which is I think Twitter, you've got a better chance of somebody who's going to buy a print of your post reaching them. I think Instagram is where more people are probably looking if they might pay you for work.
Yeah.
I don't think you've got a particularly good chance of somebody who might commission you for a brand or for a personal piece, like just running into your post, even if it's got thousands and thousands of likes on Twitter. But I think, if you can hashtag in the right way, if your profile's set up well, I think you can find, people can find you on Instagram that might like your work and want to work with you professionally.
Yeah, and there's more platforms that we'll discuss a bit later on, but these two are the main ones, aren't they, right now?
Yeah.
Or are they? Well, like you just said, Carl, you don't use it to the full potential. Who does? We might not. TikTok might be the best place for artists right now. We don't know. Yeah, we just don't. There's
just so many, aren't there? And that's the problem. It's kind of. I think whatever you do, whatever route you decide to go down, you just need to concentrate it a lot and put your effort into it and make sure, because I'm sure every single one of these social media accounts has their benefits. That's going to help somebody, for the purpose of this pod, we want to make sales. So I think all of them will have their benefits. It's just a question of investing the right amount of time and effort into a particular account. Maybe a couple, maybe all of them, but as long as you kind of put the emphasis on one in particular, you're gonna get the work, or the sales, should we say?
Yeah, I think from the point of view of what the context of the podcast is about, I think starting off, I would open again just Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, I'd have my Instagram as a portfolio type place where I'd post all fresh artwork, work in progress, and product stuff as well. Mm-hmm. What things look like in frames.
Yep.
Videos of it getting framed. What it looks like actually drawing the piece that I'm working on. All of those videos are really good for Instagram. And I'd use Twitter mainly for giving stuff away.
Yeah.
Mainly for just giving free art away and then managing that community.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you should go down the same route if you were to start again.
For me, I'd probably do them both as joint. But when I'll be honest, when I look at this is probably again down to what I do, but when I look at my engagement on my website as to where most of my traffic comes from, it generally is Twitter. But then, I said, that's because I post mainly on there. It's weird, right? I don't know how do you guys do it? So if you're posting a piece, do you go Instagram first and then post it to Twitter, or do you post it on Twitter first and then post it to Instagram?
Definitely Twitter first.
I always do it on Twitter first.
Twitter first, yeah.
Yeah, and then
I'll post more work in progress stuff. It's weird because I don't really have a set, and I think people will be surprised that, especially for you two, who've got well more of a following. People will be surprised that we've not really got like a structure that we post every day. Do you know what I mean? Like once this piece is at this stage and when I post it, that's not how my brain works.
No.
But what I do know that I am consistent with is that when I'm creating a piece of artwork, I am taking snapshots of it all the way from start to finish, from when it's just a line drawing right the way through to adding colorwork, highlights, and then eventually the final piece. And I'm pretty consistent posting those work in progress shots on stories and also on Instagram as well. On Instagram stories and on Twitter.
Well. I think that's important, because when you're trying to sell your product, or your prints, I think it's people buy into you as an artist, and if you show them the process of what you're doing and how you got there, I think it can only benefit you. As we know that there are a lot of artists. And listen, this is not to sort of have a go at anyone. They can do it anyway. But I've seen art that looks to me very much like somebody's just used an app to filter the illustration as such. And listen, people got to do what they got to do if they want to make sales. And if somebody thinks it's beautiful, that's absolutely fine. But I there's an element of me that if it was me buying somebody's trade, I'd be happy to pay the money to buy what they've done, because you can see, like you do, you put the process on there, you can see the process, the work in progress, the start. So they've obviously put the time and effort, as opposed to somebody who's just got a picture and manipulated it with an app. And effectively you could do that yourself. Do you know what I mean? If you're the person who's buying it. So I think it is important to kind of just people to buy into you as an illustrator. When you want to sell something to the public, they need to just get a feel and understand what you're doing. So I think to do that is, I think that's such a good idea.
I've directly asked my following on Twitter before, do people prefer to just see a finished piece, or do they like to see the process and work in progress? And people have always said that they like to see work in progress stuff. I think they want to feel part of the process as much as possible. And I think being able to share that stuff, when you're just working on personal projects that you might be selling in a print shop or whatever, I think, always share that stuff. I think you'll almost always get a good response from it. I've had work in progress stuff sometimes that does better as a post than the final piece. And as frustrating as that can be, ultimately the goal is just engagement. So driving engagement however you can, so that your pieces continue to do well when you do post them, is the most important thing. Just as a little tangent, it's work in progress, not what was it?
Working progress. It's work in progress.
Yeah, It's not working progress, as one of the three of us thought it was.
No. I knew it. I knew it was work in progress. I just happened to be tired at the time I typed it.
Absolutely.
Whatever your lizard.
Well, I mean, it makes absolute fuck off. It makes absolute sense. When you put the hashtag, you put WIP, don't you? So obviously it's work in progress. So
yeah. And you definitely knew that, 100%.
And I'm definitely not a lizard. I told you, brown people are not allowed near the monarchy.
But look, going back to that sort of, like I said, the context of the podcast again, I'll just sort of run through the social media channels that I have used and do use consistently. Instagram, Twitter, me main two. They're sort of the foundational social media platforms that I use. I do use LinkedIn as well. I do use LinkedIn, and what I found on LinkedIn is that I get a lot of sales after people actually DM me and ask about my process on there. So a lot of that's topical stuff, but it's more real life related. So here's what I felt about this moment, and I'll put a bit more narrative on LinkedIn, and then people will engage with that, DM me and say, I love that goal, can I have a print of yours? And most of my sales through LinkedIn are all just direct sales, so they don't go to my website. They'll literally message me and be like, can you send me 3 prints of this for my office? Or so LinkedIn, Twitter, doing a lot of giveaways, done that consistently for years now. Instagram, more portfolio type stuff, and TikTok and YouTube, work in progress videos is what, is probably where the benefits of that lie a bit more. I think I still need to spend more time doing that, if I'm honest. Like the same with Instagram Reels, that video content is good if you can tap into the sort of template to use to be able to entertain people.
Yeah, I think the one thing that it's worth talking about as well is just the way that you have to structure posts differently across different platforms. So obviously on Twitter, you've got the 280 character limit, and that's going to include any links that you want to include and any hashtags. The other side of that on Twitter is, I would always say to anybody that asks, never directly put a link in a post. You always want to do like a little bit of a spiel about the piece, then obviously your images, and then either I will often put a link in the next comment so that people that click on the thread can see it, or, you know, do the classic like link in bio thing. But Twitter is pretty notorious for squashing posts that include external links, so I wouldn't ever recommend that people
just
put
to
a link in
caveat that
there.
as well, the reason behind that is probably because Twitter wants you to stay on their platform.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you
It
put a
makes
link
sense.
in your tweet, you go away from their platform, which is what they don't want.
Similarly for Instagram, you can't actually put links in posts. You have to put it in your bio, or the good thing is that you can now always include a link in your Instagram story. So if you post about a new piece, back that up with a story, hyperlink to your store where people can buy the prints. I think Callie made an interesting point specifically about LinkedIn, but I've experienced it on every platform that, you know, as much as you might think that whether you've got, you know, 500 followers, 5,000 or 50,000, everybody knows that you have a shop. I still always get DMs when I post a new piece, like, oh, where can I buy this?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you always want to keep an eye on stuff like that, because typically if somebody's eager enough to send you a message, they're almost certainly going to go through the purchase, and then will probably also be the kind of person that you can rely on for repeat sales.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think there's so much to cover, isn't there? I think starting, even just looking at like the way you set up your profile, just to touch on your point there, Yoni, having the barriers removed to where they can buy the stuff is the main one, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is.
The problem with Instagram is you can't put multiple links in your bio.
Yeah.
Unless I think maybe if you pay for a business type of account, you might be able to, but then you're incurring a cost, and it's just whether you want to do that or not. But finding a way to direct people and take that friction away from the sale is one of the best things you can do, because if people have to look for you, it only takes a text message for them to go up. You know, if they're looking at your website, it only takes someone to WhatsApp them and they forgot about what they were doing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The quicker they can get to that sale, even on your website itself, if you look at your website listings, make sure that it's easy to buy. It's not something that they have to read through the description, then click on this, click on that.
Yeah.
I even take away information boxes when they have to fill out the order.
Yeah.
I just literally name and address.
Yeah.
Maybe phone numbers there as well on mine, but I don't really want it there. Don't use it.
Yeah, you're not obliged to use it. Yeah.
I think a lot of people underestimate how important that kind of customer journey is, because I had this thought process when I was first setting up my own shop. Obviously, if you're on something like Etsy or a similar platform, you are limited in how flexible you could make your own customer experience. But I would always say, like, if you've got a new piece coming out that you think is going to pop, and you think that's going to sell, don't get ahead of yourself and think, well, if they buy that and I show them other products, they might buy 2 or 3 more. I would always say you want to reduce the number of clicks to as few as possible. So if you've got a new piece out and you're going to put a link in your bio to it, just put a link straight to that piece. If you can add a buy it now link where they don't have to then add it to basket, then click basket, then click checkout, then do that, because every single click, you are going to lose people. I think it's really important to always keep an eye on what that funnel looks like. I think it's something like your typical store will be 100 people visit your website. 10 out of those 100 might add something to their basket, and 1 out of those 10 will actually finish the purchase. And, you know, if you're just adding more hurdles for them to get over, then that's going to get lower and lower.
Yeah. Or the other thing I would say is, if you are going to add just a link to your website, make sure that new piece is right at the front.
Yeah.
So when they click on it, if you don't want to give them that direct link into the actual piece, which I think Yoni is right, that's what you should do. But if you're just going to give your website in general, make sure that's the first piece they see, and it's not hidden that they've got to search it, because they won't be asked.
Yeah.
Just going back to what you were saying, Callie, I think Linktree is a good thing to use. I think all 3 of us use. I know
I actually
Yoni
don't use it.
I use it because I think I use it because I saw Yoni used it, and I thought, oh, that's a good idea. I think that's quite a good thing. I know it's not. I know there's an extra click to go through Linktree and then go to all your links to your websites, Instagram and stuff. But that's the only way I can see at the moment to be able to get all your socials and all your websites and everything in one place, because like you were saying, there's not in your bio, you don't have that much space, and I think you can only put a link to one website, and some people might be running a shop as well as their own portfolio, so you want to be able to do both for client work as well as selling print. So I think Linktree is quite a good thing, and it's free. I think it's free, isn't it, to use?
Yeah, you can pay for. I think I pay for a premium version, but you can get a free account. I think. I agree with.
Set one up.
I agree with Karl. I think it's a really useful thing, but I think you always have to accept is the more complex you become as a product offering. So all three of us here, we have shops and we work for clients. And then on top of that, I also have filmmaking as a totally separate career. So I know for a fact that by diversifying my income streams, each one of them will probably go down a little bit. So, my print sales were at their peak when I didn't do client work, when I wasn't doing work for other people. Overall, my career is improved and improved, the more diverse it's become. But you have to acknowledge that you're going to lose some of the other sides of it if you do that. So if you're adding a link tree because you need to link to your portfolio, or you have a professional website and a store website, well, then you are probably going to see a drop-off in those store sales. But that's fine, because as long as your overall pie is growing, then don't worry about if those individual segments start to shrink a little bit.
Yeah, when it comes down to that social media again, it always comes back to that, because it's a whole different podcast on how to get sales from different types of clients, whether that's a print buyer, an NFT, a buyer, a collector, or a commercial outlet. It comes down to social media again. If you promote your prints more, or if you do more print-based content in your social media right across your platforms, then you will get more prints. So it's just it's one of those, isn't it, that you've always got to have your finger on the pulse.
Absolutely. And I would say as well is the one thing I think that you should decide from when you're starting an account is if you're so let's say similar to us, we do football illustrations, decide if you're going to be club specific or you're going to do everybody from the get-go. Because what I found in my experience, obviously because we're all Liverpool fans and that's predominant work I did, is that once you've kind of set up your account and I do a lot of Liverpool based artwork, then I'm going to get a lot of Liverpool based followers, which is obviously natural. But then when you try to produce another product for another club because you're trying to expand a bit, it makes it more difficult, because obviously, don't get me wrong, some people might buy it for a gift for somebody or a friend or whatever, but to try and give that to that sort of following is quite hard, and then it kind of discourages you to continue down that route. Whereas I think as an illustrator, to be able to be open to all types of sports, all types of football, not just what you love in specific or the team you love in specific, for your own store and your sales will be much more beneficial long term, because you're not, in reality, when you do one club or one team, that's, you can only sell to those people or those fans. You could sell to a few people that would, like I said, buy it for gifts for someone else. My point is that if you're going to start your social media account, just make sure that you know which direction you want your sales to be, because it's important. It's I think it's very important that you decide on which we're going to do. If you're going to be club specific, absolutely fine. But if you're going to do a bigger picture, you should do it from the start rather than sort of wait 6 months till you got your following and then kind of branch out like I tried to do.
I think if we unpack that, we could give people some really good advice there. I don't know, do you want to say something quickly on it before we make this point?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, obviously we have a perspective here coming from the fact that we're three Liverpool fans. So we have started out creating work for a club that has millions upon millions upon millions of fans around the world. But I do think there are also examples of people who are fans of somewhat smaller clubs who still do this really well. So, for example, there's Phil, who is at PNM 1979. He's a Crystal Palace fan. He does really, really cool work.
Does good artwork, yeah.
And he seems to have always done really, really well with his Palace-specific stuff, as well as a little bit of branching out. But I think he's a really great example of somebody who's managed to find a niche with, still a big club, but a smaller club than Liverpool, and still does really well out of it. And I think he's also had some opportunities directly with the club. So I just wanted to point out that if you are a fan of a club that some people might say is smaller, or somebody might say, well, are there even enough fans of that club out there? I think there's always enough people to make a living and sustain, a career selling prints. I know there's some other artists, like I've seen some artists who are like Stoke City fans who do some really cool stuff and have done really well out of it. And I think there are plenty of examples of smaller clubs out there. So don't feel afraid if you are, not a fan of one of the big few clubs in the UK or in world football. I think if your art is good enough, you'll always find an audience.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I think what I was just going to sort of unpack, and it relates to both of those perspectives, is that we've all done it different ways. We're all Liverpool fans. Yoni, you've had your film stuff and your print stuff, predominantly LFC based. When I started, my Twitter handle and Instagram handle was Cali LFC Art. So in my head, I was just Liverpool. I was Liverpool. Karl, you've done multiple clubs from the start, from what I can see. But again, it's still predominantly Liverpool stuff. I have changed direction multiple times to different sports, different things, and we probably all have. We've not done it right. We've not done it the right way, or the optimal way for the most sales in terms of what we know now. But we've still made a living doing what we're doing, and that's through consistency and developing as an artist, and just not really knowing what's going on, just being consistent and persistent in doing it. But what I was going to say is, there is an argument that optimal point is probably I'll take for example Twitter. Most of my Twitter interactions are based around the narrative around Liverpool Football Club, the matches, who scores, and then my artwork sort of tagged onto that. It's still to this day, if I was to start again, I would probably have a football account and the art account, but they go hand in hand. I make sales from them discussions. So what do you do? What do you do? Do you just go, fuck it, I'm going to do all different types of art, but I'm still going to commentate on all different types of sports? You can't really pick up what the most beneficial point is of what direction to go in, can you? Because they probably offset in terms of benefits.
Yeah, I think I've always felt like there is no guarantees in anything that we do. I'm sure all three of us have done pieces where we've gone, fuck, this is going to go down a storm. This is going to be my bestseller. I cannot wait to post this. I'm going to book a holiday next week off the back of this one design. And you post it, it gets like 100 likes, and you make one sale. I think like, as an artist,
like this Trent Alexander-Arnold that we're going to flash up on the screen, which didn't sell too well, but it's a shameless plug.
Exactly, and it's a beautiful piece.
Buy it.
But I think if you're predominantly a print, like if you're predominantly selling prints, and that is mainly what you're doing, so essentially you are just generating your own product. Just do what you're passionate about. Like you're never going to be able to guarantee that anything will sell that well, unless like the only caveat to that I would say is like if you're a fan of a club and they do something monumental, if you've got a design ready to go off the back of that, as soon as it happens or within a really short amount of time of it happening, then they will probably fly off the digital shelves. But other than that, just create something you feel really passionate about. That will resonate with people. That will show in the piece. You will make better artwork. And ultimately, whether that sells 2 or 200 prints, if you're really pleased with the outcome, you won't be that disappointed. But if you've just created something because you thought it was going to sell and it doesn't, that's how you can very quickly become disillusioned, I think.
Yeah. And again, like we said, when we're posting, through that process of creating these things through your social media accounts, you'll get a sort of feel for how people are reacting to that piece from the start, why you're creating it. And if you can convey why you're creating it, the reason why you're doing it, how you're creating it, and you're putting that all out on social media platforms, you're probably going to get more traction, more engagement, and more sales from it. Whereas if you just post a piece like, how is Mane banging in a goal along, I
was just going to say, this is what I was going back to saying about when you start an account, whether you should sort of broaden your horizons or kind of stick to one club. Or I think the fact, what you should really do is do what you love to start with, because that's why you're involved in it. Right, and that's exactly why all three of us do what we do, and why we started from a Liverpool basis, because there are a couple of things that work quite well. Is that we all love the club, we all love designing artwork for these players, and we know that there's especially amongst the Liverpool supporters, there's a big sort of fan art, sort of independent artists, people like to buy from them. So that start alone is great, and also at the same time it coincided with the fact that the club are probably the best they've ever been in my lifetime anyway, in my opinion. So the success of the club does help you. What I was trying to say is, going back to sort of the beginning of it, is that I've noticed, being Liverpool specific, that over the sort of ups and downs, like for last season, for example, which was a really poor season. Well, it wasn't poor in the end, because obviously we got top four, which is what we wanted. But in general, it wasn't a trophy laden season, and it was a struggle. That I found that my shop took a hit from that, if that makes sense. Even though I'm producing the artwork and I'm doing what I love, I felt that my shop took a hit from that, which kind of made me led to realise that I'm doing what I love, and I should, the majority of the time, do that. But there should be an element of, in sort of maybe 1/3 of doing stuff that, not that I don't love, because I love to illustrate, but for, if you're going to be doing football art, for example, to do other clubs and do other styles, because then when you do have that kind of a bit of a barren period, or one of these other sort of clubs might be a bit more successful, then it allows you to still continue that high level of sales that you want from your shop. And at the end of the day, ultimately that is what you're doing as a store. To have a store is to have a long-term living and make these sales. And I think that if you can just at least take 1/3 of your passion to keep doing the artwork, but obviously to do it on a different scale, whether it be a different club, a different sport, or what have you. I just think long term, on a longer scale, as you begin to grow, you'll see more benefits from that than kind of just being specifically one club sort of related. And that's just from my experience over the last few years or so of doing what we're doing.
Definitely something to be aware of. I think I've got a slight counterpoint to that as well, though. There's been times where Liverpool have been really poor, and because I'm stubborn, I've thought, well, I'm not going to let this affect my sales. And the way I've approached the social media, I've been more prolific on it, but in a value sense, not in a I'm going to post more sense.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure that I'm posting the best content of my artwork at the best times. And I haven't figured out what those best times are, but in my opinion, what would I want to see from an artist at these times? And that has actually made my sales go up in those barren periods.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a counterpoint, but the overarching theme is, if all your eggs in one basket, and your club's doing shit, it's going to be more challenging to continue those sales, isn't it?
I just think for that long term vision of your store, because you're not doing a store for 12 months, you're not doing it for 2 years. This is a means to have a career as an illustrator, to make sales and to grow, and then maybe at some point get staff to help you, whatever the case may be. If you want to get, I just think in the bigger picture, you just need to at least have a very, like I said, a small portion that's dedicated to other sports, and and also it just exactly, and it just kind of tests you, it will test you, and it will give you a little bit of a different direction, And I look at some of the best sellers that are on Etsy. I don't know if you follow D Griffin Art, like he does he did this. I don't know if you can see I'm not going to bother to move my camera and stuff, but I will. But it's that Anfield. I know it's a bit focused. He does all that type of art, but he does every single club. And I mean, if you go on his Etsy, like he started, maybe if I remember rightly, he probably started a year or 2 years after me. I've just gone on his Etsy to have a look to see, because obviously you can see the sales he's made. He's done 23,000 sales. Well, he's on the edge of doing 24,000 sales, and I'm not sure what club he supports. I don't actually know. I think it might be like you alluded to earlier, Yoni, a lower team, or a team that's not as big a fan base, shall we say. But he does everything. He does everything. He does like the playoff finals, whether it be Rangers and Ibrox and stuff. And 24,000 sales. It's just it's unbelievable.
That's probably attributed to the fact that he caters to everybody.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'd like to see what his social media presence is like as well.
I don't. The thing is, I don't know how he advertises his stuff, or what kind of routes he goes down. But I'm not sure that he's. I don't know that his social media side of stuff is. It's not the level of what we're doing for sure. But it's it's just somebody I always, like I said, just to see how well he sort of progressed, and also who invited Jamie, should I say? He does so many different clubs, so many different sports and stuff, and I mean the fact that he turns around his artwork really quickly, that makes a huge difference if you can be as quick as that. But he just seems to be continuously having pieces out, but it doesn't matter the club or whatever. He's sort of, and I know he's a Liverpool fan, but he's broadening his horizons, and that seems to be working for him. And that's not me saying that doing one specific club it can't work for you. Of course it can. I just think in my humble opinion, in the long term vision of your store, if you can kind of open those doors when you're starting it from the get go, just to get some of those other extra fans as your followers, when you're doing your 1s and 2000s, your follow count starts to go up. Then as you sort of grow, you can, you could definitely, you've got a bigger audience to sell your stuff to.
Yeah, I think it does sort of link into what to post. Like, obviously we mentioned being topical. I mean, in the sport world, you can be really topical when you're posting on social media with your artwork. So, for example, Liverpool could win 2-1 and you can do the winning goal scorer after the game and then post it, and then people's emotions are going to drive them to buy that piece. There's an element of that I've done in the past, and I still do to a degree, but I don't generally follow that trend just because of how competitive it is of people doing the same goals in the same space at the same time. But if we can maybe talk a little bit about that strategy, what would your preferred method be on the topical stuff?
I just post a piece that feels somewhat relevant. So, like, if not to drag our emotions through the mud anymore, but if Sadio Mane scores for Liverpool, I'll just post a piece of Sadio, and that you've
previously done.
Yeah, it just seems to do pretty well. I've never had any issues with stuff like that. I think it's always good to have as many pieces you can ready to go on that kind of stuff. The king of it is probably the king of it is either Dave Flanagan or Stanley Chow, because I think they've just illustrated everybody that's ever existed. So every celebrity's birthday, they've always got something to go. But I think, not just with the football stuff, keep an eye on what's trending on Twitter. And if you've got something relevant to post it. The most important thing with stuff like that is you just want the Twitter algorithms to see the kind of post you do well with, and then regularly, push the interaction onto your platform, basically.
Yeah. I think in terms of getting sales and getting noticed and kind of getting your follow count up on the social media side of stuff, just to get these sales. I think it is, especially at the start, is to follow trend, is to, you know, if somebody scores a goal and, you know, there's a famous picture of them doing a celebration, or, you know, there's a particular iconic picture of them striking the ball. And I know that, you know, in this sort of day and age, that most illustrators will sort of quickly jump on their iPads or their computers and they'll draw the same image, and, you know, we've seen it a million times. But I think for you to grow your follower account, I think you should follow that same trend just at the beginning, until you've sort of established yourself and established your market and your following, because that's how you'll get noticed. And, you know, as much as sometimes you don't want to be a sheep and follow what everyone else does, or do the same picture that everyone else does. I think at the beginning, just to think of the follow account and the sales that you may get, you know, from these people in 6 months or 2 years, because you attracted them from that one post at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think that it's more important to do it then. And then once you've established your community and your following, then you can kind of like, if you don't want to be a sheep, pick a different picture from that match, but still kind of have it within the realms of, you know, this is what the hot topic is at the moment, and I'm going to go with it, but I'm just going to do something slightly different.
Yeah. There's different strings to the bow again, though, isn't there? Like, you can, for example, it comes into how you run your business. Yeah. So we're looking at it from the social media lens, but for example, if, like we said, Mane scored a winner this weekend and it was an absolute screamer, and aesthetically it was good enough for everyone to draw, say 10 people drawing that picture, you're going to know which one of them's mine.
Yeah.
So if your art style is a specific way, or if you've got a stamp that people instantly recognize your work, then go for the topical stuff, and post the shit out of it on social media. You know, I think if I'd done more topical stuff, I'd probably make more sales, because of how distinct my style is, and people would instantly see, oh, that's Callie's. So there's things like that you've got to consider when you're posting as well. Is your post different to the Mane that someone else is going to post, or that the other Fernandez artist is going to post?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then maybe you should think about going in a different direction, or maybe you back yourself and you make sales. I'm not saying that's the right way to go, but it's definitely something my posts are driven by my style of art.
Yeah.
And who I know my audience to be.
Yeah, your images identify you. Like, you know,
correct.
You can look at it straight away and know that's your artwork. And I think you're right. And I think if you're gonna post something in, like we said, in the realms of what 10 other artists are going to be posting the same sort of thing, then you do need to kind of just have your own stamp on it. Make sure people when they look at it, they see the 10 and they know which one yours is out of the 10. Forget if other people know other people artists. Just as long as they know which one is yours, as you try to build your community and your following on social media, then that's the best way to do it. And
an interesting just point that I want to make on that as well. When I first started making real sales, like when I first sold out of a pile of prints, obviously I was ordering them in bulk, like we all do when we first start out. I started doing iconic moments, and it was historic ones, so it wasn't stuff that's happening now. It was Steven Gerrard scoring in the Champions League and FA Cup finals, and I knew before I draw them goals how emotional I felt toward those images.
Yeah.
And I knew that the art was good enough and that my style had developed to a point where if I post this around the 25th of May, I'm going to make at least 10 sales.
Yeah.
So there's different ways you can be topical as well, but having that in your thought process is definitely worth doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's quite a good thing to do as well, is when you are posting, is to maybe have your images as part of a series rather than a one-off. Because people like that. People like a collection of, you know, I've had yeah, exactly. I've had people who buy my artwork and, you know, they'll buy 3 pieces that are all kind of linked in some sort of way, or, you know, they're part of a collection. And I think that's a really good thing to do online when you're posting, is to just let people feel part, like you said, part of the story, and they kind of buy into that, and that helps you get more sales. And then, you know, if you've done, I don't know, 3 pieces to this collection, which all have their own individual meaning, but they're all part of the same sort of grand plan or whatever it may be, then people are more likely to buy all three than just one, unless there's one in specific that they can really relate to. But in general, people like to buy a collection, and they'll have all three hanging next to each other in the walls of their house and stuff.
I think one thing to always think of as well when you're trying to decide how to allocate your time, because ultimately, like, that is the biggest battle for anybody who's an artist, is you have to decide what pieces you're going to give your time to. It's always worth trying to come up with a handful of pieces that will always sell. So, like Callie said, whether it's something around Istanbul that he knows that, every 12 months he's going to get a decent little spike in sales from. Like, I always tell people, like, I've got my Freddie Mercury print, I've got a Jaws design that I did, and I know that if I don't do anything in a month, I'll probably still sell 10 of each of those. That's on Etsy. It's not through my own shop, but it's just because that's the thing that people are constantly searching for, and people are always, they're always gift purchases. I don't think anybody's buying it for themselves, but they do well as that kind of thing. And I think it's always worth thinking to yourself, what can be my bread and butter sales? Can I have 2 or 3 designs that are just going to keep things ticking over every single month? Because the pressure of producing constant of the moment designs, sometimes you might miss out on something that's a little bit more timeless.
Absolutely, that's spot on. I agree with you totally.
Yeah, you sort of limit it, isn't it? It comes a bit more down to, again, the types of content, like that's topical stuff, and there's, again, I'm trying to think where to start, but like, first and foremost, you're posting your artwork, aren't you, on your social media?
Yeah.
One of the main things for me, and I'm looking again through this, trying to build the first 1,000 sales perspective, one of the big, massive changes for me was alternating the type of content that I post. I went from just posting artwork to posting the process of my artwork. And then what made me the biggest jump in sales was showing how that artwork looks as a product. Posting pictures of that artwork in a frame, in a mocked up frame on the wall, doing a video of me putting it in a frame, doing it on a t-shirt so people could see it as a product. When I started posting that type of content, not all the time, just here and there, my sales went from like 10 a month to up to nearly like 50 a month. And it was a simple change that I made, and I wish someone would have told me when I first started out, if you want to make sales, be product specific as well. Not just that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed anything similar.
The one thing I noticed, which I think is, slightly different for what you're saying, but the one thing I noticed, was always a good in terms of sales and making money, in terms of getting that revenue in, was doing limited editions. People, if it's only around for a short period of time, and and it's well, all my artwork's good to me. But yeah, if it's a good piece of artwork, and it's something that, I don't know, for example, I'll never forget the first one I did. So I did the front three, was one of the, it wasn't quite the first piece of artwork I did, but this was the point where things started to pick up. And I did the original front three together, and I think I Salah pointing to the sky, and I can't remember what they're all set out, and Bobby had his hand over his eye and stuff. Anyway, I did a limited edition candy kit, the 89 with the speckles on it, the famous one, and I'm not joking. When I put it up, I only did a limited edition. I think I did 20 or 40, and within this is the first time I'd ever experienced this. Within 10-15 minutes, I sold everything out, and I was just like, "What is going on here?" I just couldn't believe it.
Limited edition.
Yeah. Well, I did. You know what? I did actually. I wouldn't say I was a little bit cheeky, but I did put a post out. I said I increased it to 40 instead of 20. Yeah. I mean, no, everybody had bought one. Everyone was like, "Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We understand." And I've never sold it again, and it was a part of me over a period of time. I wish I could sell it again, because it was
back on sale now.
Yeah. So but limited edition, they do. Again, you're limiting the amount of revenue you're going to get in, but if they're only available for a short period of time, people are more likely to buy it, rather than if this I can get it anytime. oh, it's gonna be closing at the end of the month. And we're all, you know, even in everyday life, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff we've seen on sale, whether it be a pair of trainers or whatever the case may be. If they're limited edition, you kind of like, I've got to get them, and I've got to get them now. Number one, because there's only a short time to get it, and number two, you'll be one of a very limited number of people that have them.
Well, how do you start that narrative with your social media audience that you build in a limited edition set?
I kind of, for me, I just sort of notify. I mean, it's a bit different because obviously it's more of a case that once your shop is a bit more established and you are making sales, and you know, people know your artwork and who you are as a person, you know, they've bought into you and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it was just I would just post, say, listen, I'm gonna be creating this piece, work in progress. This is what it's gonna look like. It's gonna be a limited piece. There's gonna be, you know, there's going to be 20, 40, 50, whatever the case may be. They'll, you know, and I would do stuff like they would all be numbered. Some people wanted me to sign it. I mean, I don't often sign my own artwork, but some people want me to sign it. Some people want me to sign the back. It just depends on their preference. And I was open to all sort of, you know, whatever you want. It's your print if that's what you want. But I would make sure that people knew before I put them on sale, this is going to be a limited piece. This is when it's likely to be. You want to kind of build the hype. This is when it's. Yeah. This is what it is. This is what it looks like. This is when it's going on sale, and this is how many pieces there are going to be. And when you kind of build that hype, and you kind of, but you continuously post it over a period of time. You don't just do one post. You'll do like, so. Let's say, for example, all right, I'm going to be. It's Monday. I'm going to be selling it on Friday. So throughout that week, I would do different things to let people know that, you know, don't forget this is going on sale. There's only going to be 50 pieces. When they're gone forever. You know, you kind of use these big words, or I say big words, but, you know, kind of shocking words that people think, all right, cool, it's never going to be on sale again, etc. And you have to build the hype. And then once you've kind of built the hype, hopefully once you put it on sale, generally, you know, they get sold out pretty quick, and then you think to yourself, shit, I should have done 100. But you know, that's just kind of how it goes. But yeah, I think for me that was my process behind kind of getting it out there to people.
I think just on that idea, I think I want to make a couple of points. One, I think a limited edition version always does really well when it is exactly that. I think if you just like knock up a piece and say like, oh, this is limited to this many, then people might be into it. But if you do a standard version and then do like a special version that has a thing about it, people will sometimes feel a little bit more compelled, because there's that point of contrast which I think people can really get into. Similar to you, I did a Salah piece a few years ago now, like 3-4 years ago. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I can't remember. Time is nothing.
No one cares. Nobody cares.
Thanks, mate.
How long ago it was?
And I did a version where it was like on this shimmery paper.
3 years and 1 month ago.
And it was Salah in the candy away kit, and people fucking loved it. And obviously the other side of that is you need to figure out what people might be into. But I think one thing that I'd always say to people is like, if you've done something special, if you've done a special version of something and it sells really well, don't allow that devil on your shoulder to convince you to like bastardize it by then doing another version that you can sell more of. You know, sometimes you need to allow the satisfaction of your audience to exist, and don't take anything away from them.
Yeah.
Find out what they want.
Yeah. You shouldn't like, don't do everything as a limited edition. Oh, this one sold well, that has to have a limited edition. You know, you do it few and far between, and also there has to be a reason behind it. There has to be a significance. It's just not like turn everything into a limited edition. Like, for example, I did my, you know, I've done the Gerrard years poster where it's just got him through the years, and I did it's just him in the red, each red kit he's worn. You know, there's iconic moments where he scored the goal in Champions League, when he first came captain, when he made his debut, all these types of kits. And then obviously because he's such an iconic player and a legend, I decided to do a limited edition version, but in the away kits, the exact same, you know, but where he was wearing the away kits. And I always think that those types of things, you know, there's a reason behind it. He's an iconic person. You know, that was an important piece to me. I loved that piece, and that's kind of why I did it. And I think that when you're doing limited editions, like you said, you just need to make sure, you know, there's importance behind it and a reason as to why you're doing it, not just for the fact that look, ultimately we want to make money. Let's not beat around the bush. All of us are here to stores to make money, to live a decent life, but there are ways, and not everything is a cash grab, and you don't have to do it with every single piece you do. So yeah, you're right, you do need to kind of limit it to specific things, and something that is quite important, I think anyway.
I think it keeps coming back to that, how do you do it on social media? So it's like the story that you tell is the most important.
Yeah.
From why you're creating it to how you create it. Yeah. And it, for example, me and you, Karl, have both got Gerard through the years different pieces. And I think if we were to do a couple of weeks now of trying to promote them separately in different ways, we both sell out pretty decent amounts.
And Yoni's got his
go about it.
He's got his ripped one as well.
Yeah, Yoni's got his ripped one as well, with different kits on from through the years. So all three of us can go different ways about it, but the story that you tell on the social media of why you're doing that is what's going to get you the sales. It's guaranteed. And what's your connection to it? And again, whether it's through Twitter, where you're literally doing short insights to different kits. For example, just if I was Yoni, I might do what each kit meant to me in just like little blurbs throughout the week. This kit with a picture of that kit, this kit with a picture of that kit, and what goal it might relate to on different years. But that timeline of why it's there, why you're doing it, what you're doing it for, is what's going to get you the reach in the social media sales, because you'll have people engaging with you on social media about that goal or about that kit. And again, people can see right through you on social media, and it's one of those things I've said from the very start. If you're not authentically trying to create art for a reason that you want to give value to people, you want to let people remember that goal, or you want to tell people how you feel about that goal just in general. If you're just doing it to make sales,
absolutely, they've got to buy into you.
They've got to buy into you and what you believe.
Exactly.
And that's not even like product specific as well. If I was making chairs for a living, I'd be telling people on social media why I'm making them chairs. I like to give people comfort on their asses. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever it is.
Exactly. And all of us, we do what we do as illustrators. We do it well. I mean, most people, pretty much everybody, should be at this stage, but you do it because you love it. That's the real fundamental reason you do it, because you love it. And if you love it that much, and it means that much to you, show people how much you love it and why you're doing it, and let them be a part of your journey. Because you don't, when you start as an illustrator, almost like a footballer, you don't start the finished product, and over the years you're trying to better yourself and better your journey as an illustrator, get better at what you're doing so that you can produce the best possible art or sell the sales. And I think it's important on the social side of things to let people be in part of that story and be part of that journey, and feel like they've been with you from the start, to when you were just selling a couple of pieces to selling 1,000 pieces to selling 10,000 pieces or 20,000 pieces. But you should always, like you said, tell the story. So every piece you produce, there's a reason behind it, there's a fundamental reason behind it, and people, once they get that, they'll definitely buy into it, and hopefully it will increase your sales.
Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Someone's knocking at your door. Someone's ringing the bell.